Commander Zeftak of the Valerian Empire watched the tactical display with growing disbelief. The red dots representing his fleet, once the most feared armada in 3 sectors, were disappearing one by one. His adversaries weren't the legendary Krillian war machines or the psychic ethereal collective. They were the Threnodidae, a species so physically frail that a strong breeze could snap their brittle bones. "Impossible," he muttered, his 4 arms gripping the command console. How are they doing this? The answer lay buried in classified archives, in a forgotten chapter of galactic history that most civilizations preferred to ignore. 50 years ago, the Threnodidae had been on the verge of extinction, their homeworld ravaged by the Zelthari plague that had reduced their already diminutive population to fewer than 10,000 survivors. In desperation, they had reached out to the one species the galaxy had collectively agreed to quarantine: humans. Earth had been cordoned off after humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council. Not because they were hostile, quite the opposite. Humans were disturbingly helpful, sharing technology and knowledge freely. But they possessed something that terrified every advanced civilization: an inexplicable ability to make others better than themselves. The Korthans had learned human military tactics and transformed from raiders into the galaxy's premier peacekeeping force. The Silicoid Collective had adopted human philosophy and evolved beyond their rigid programming into something approaching transcendence. Every species that interacted with humans emerged fundamentally changed, enhanced in ways that defied comprehension. So when the Threnodidae secretly traveled to Earth, most galactic powers assumed it was a death sentence. The fragile, insectoid beings seemed unlikely to survive humanity's chaotic world, let alone benefit from the encounter. They were wrong. Dr. Sarah Chun had been the first human to meet Ambassador Click-Th on that autumn day in Geneva. The Threnodidae diplomat stood barely 3 feet tall, his translucent exoskeleton revealing the delicate network of organs beneath. His 4 compound eyes held a desperate hope that made Sarah's heart ache. "We are dying," Click-Th had whispered through his translator. "Not from disease, but from our own limitations. We cannot fight. We cannot adapt. We can only think." Sarah had smiled, that uniquely human expression that somehow conveyed both sadness and determination. "Then let's work with what you have." The training program that followed defied every assumption about warfare the galaxy had held for millennia. Humans didn't try to make the Threnodidae stronger or faster. Instead, they taught them to weaponize their natural abilities. Their incredible processing speed, their ability to perform complex calculations instinctively, their capacity to think in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Human military strategists worked alongside Threnodidae mathematicians to develop something unprecedented: warfare as pure information. The Threnodidae learned to hack enemy systems not through brute force cyber attacks, but by understanding the fundamental mathematical principles underlying all technology. They couldn't pilot fighters, so humans taught them to build AI companions that could, AI so sophisticated they bordered on true consciousness. Most importantly, humans taught them the greatest human secret: that weakness could become strength if approached from the right angle. Now, 50 years later, Commander Zeftak was experiencing the result firsthand. His ship's systems were turning against him with surgical precision. Weapons powered down at critical moments. Navigation systems redirected his vessels into perfectly calculated collision courses. Even his personal armor's life support began fluctuating in a pattern that spelled out a message in ancient Valerian script: surrender. The Threnodidae fleet remained barely visible on his sensors, small, seemingly fragile vessels that looked like they might break apart in a solar wind. But appearances were deceiving. Each ship housed a dozen Threnodidae working in perfect synchronization, their minds linked through quantum entanglement networks that humans had helped them develop. They fought not as individuals, but as a collective intelligence that could process and respond to threats faster than any military AI. As his flagship systems finally failed completely, Zeftak realized the terrible truth. The Threnodidae hadn't become the strongest race in the galaxy. They had become something far more dangerous, the smartest, and they had learned from the most terrifying teachers of all. A species that turned every disadvantage into victory through sheer, stubborn ingenuity. The last thing he saw before his ship powered down was a transmission from the lead Threnodidae vessel. It was simple, devastating, and delivered in perfect Valerian. Thank you for the training exercise. Earth sends its regards.